Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and it is the 28th of September. As you notice, I'm still working with the lights in the room because it is still rainy out here. The problem with hurricanes and tropical storms when they come in, for people who are not in the U.S. Or not in an area that tends to get them in the U.S., when they come up, they kind of circulate. And good morning, Pat. I'm not sure if you're getting some of this up in Canada, the post-storm stuff, this circulation. And good morning, Alex. But I'm just noticing that I still have these lights on because it's still extraordinarily rainy out. And so, yeah, it's just very. Good morning, Suda. It's just it's like my friend said the other night when we were out to dinner. She was like, she's like, I used to love September. She says, now I think I like November better because, we have the, not yet, but I've seen Florida. Oof. Oh, yeah. And yeah, I'm curious to know, I know they were saying Northwest Florida. I don't know if my sister was affected. Whatever. I mean, I'm not, I think I'm only more concerned in terms of what that will mean for my mom, because she might call my mom and go, oh my God, I need all this money. But in any case, I don't know. I haven't really looked into it, but I did see some of it yesterday in passing with all the stuff going on. So I don't know what's happening. My mother just came back, thank God. Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah, it's not a great time to be in Florida. I mean, I don't know. I'm not particularly a fan of I'm not, like, some people love to go to Florida. Like, they're like, oh, that's my destination. That's where I want to retire to. That's not where I'd want to retire. I want to retire, like I said, to England. Or I'd want to retire to somebody that has, has nice autumns. Like, there's no autumn, really, in Florida. I'm not interested in tropical places. I'm interested in places that are, have these deciduous forests where the leaves fall off the trees, and, so that's kind of where I would prefer to be. So anyway, right now we're still dealing with the unnatural light, and we'll see how much longer we have to do that. I'm kind of hoping. She's gone to Disneyland with my little brother. Oh, okay. Yeah, rain, yuck. Monsoons or hurricane as, yeah. Wow, what a time to be at Disneyland for your mom. Monsoons or hurricane. Yeah, it's definitely. That's right, because obviously, monsoon season is also a thing, certainly in certain places. Thinking particularly of India, Southeast Asia, and places like that, like the Pacific or Indian Ocean. Here it's just, I guess in a way, so at least so far, knock wood, we've been very fortunate. We're only up to Hurricane Helene. Remember we had Sandy at the end of October of 2012. I mean, that was the S hurricane, so we had quite a lot of them that year. And then I know that Hurricane Katrina in 2005 hit right around Christmas time in New Orleans. So it's not, technically hurricanes can happen throughout later in the year, but by the time you're getting to October, really you're it's on the wane. Like, the peak season is usually September. So and I'm just extremely grateful that we have not gotten the brunt of them, that we're just going to get a little rain and fog and, that kind of a thing. But I do have to go out again tonight with my imperfect car to go meet a friend for dinner for her birthday. I have a lot of September birthday friends, and because everybody's so busy, and, because I was waiting until I had paychecks and stuff, we were kind of waiting until this point in the month. Which means I'm going to miss my friend's live stream tonight, but I'll have to catch up with it tomorrow. So anyway, speaking of live streams, last night we did the one, and I know Pat was on, we did the one for part 2 of the Institute for the Study of Feminine Myth. I did talk to Kate Kingsbury yesterday, but she was not able to join. She had something else already had planned for that time slot. So she and I were just talking about... we just were talking about other business, and then because I told her, I said, you can come on if you want. She's like, she says, I don't, it didn't work out for her in any case, which was fine, because then it was just Joanna and I. And I thought that one was a really, really good conversation. I mean, it was a good conversation with Max as well. But Joanna pointed out a number of things about creativity. It kind of got back to the idea of play, because she had said to really be creative, you have to have fun. You know, you have to have play. She teaches a course at the university where I work called Creative Processes. And it's actually an honors seminar that honors students are required to take as part of their gen ed. And I know because I was in the honors program at that very school back in 1990, 1991. Well, 1990 1994 is when I went to school there. And I also went to University of Reading during that time in England. But but she was very much, but she teaches that class now. And we talked a little bit about her exercise, and I thought it was 30 minutes, but it's actually, maybe she's cut it down to 15 minutes, where her students just have to sit there and do nothing for 15 minutes. Like, don't look at the phone, don't try to think about anything, like, they could like look out the window or something, but it's 15 minutes with no purpose, right? And not to set a timer, not to keep looking at their thing. They basically, when they think 15 minutes is up, she had said, they look at their phone or whatever to see what time it was. She says, and most of them found that when they thought 15 minutes had passed, it had only been like 3 minutes or something like that. So, so she was saying, yeah, not only can they not just sit and do nothing, do we not only not know how to do that, but also that they don't have a concept of time, you know, and it's interesting. One of the things that they say is that when you're younger, time tends to move slow, and the older you get, time tends to feel like it's moving more quickly. Like, I come on here every morning and I'm like, damn, how are we at the end of the month already, you know? Because I feel like time moves very, very fast. I mean, of course, when there's something we don't want to do and we have to wait for something, then it feels like time takes forever. And that may well be the case with these students. But she said, yeah, they don't have a good concept of time. Because you know how it is. Sometimes you can just feel like what 15 minutes is, what an hour is. And we do sometimes lose track of that. I've had times where I'm like, oh, it's only been about, sometimes there has been times when I think it's been 10, it's only been, it's like an hour's gone by and only 10 minutes have gone by. I've had experiences like that. But I've had the reverse too, where I'm like, oh, well, this has only taken me a few minutes. And then I look at the clock and I'm like, whoa, it's 3 hours later. How did that happen? You know? So yeah, just interesting in thinking about time and how we perceive time. I mean, time to some degree is illusory, but the way in which we measure it for the things that we do, it's really, I don't know. I thought that was just quite an interesting experiment. But she has her own step-by-step thing that she walks people through in terms of, okay, writing a short poem and then writing a longer poem and then, just doing different things. And we'd also talked about the way in which when people are creative, like sometimes what I used to do with my myth class, and I kind of experimented with it when I did it in person, is I would let them do a collage on a particular myth, like do something artistic. And some of them loved it. They got so into that because they would much rather do that than write me a paper on myth, And I thought about that too. I said, we always privilege writing a lot in the academic world. And I'm of course a fan of writing because I love to talk and I love to write. But it also occurs to me, I said, that's, some people would just flourish if they were able to do things differently, creatively, And so, So anyway, we were just kind of talking about it because I wanted people to hear how Joanna teaches myth. And not only teaches myth, but we were also talking about Baba Yaga a lot because she is teaching the class on Baba Yaga and how Baba Yaga tends to represent the powers of nature and the way in which, you can do everything right. We always tend to think of it, especially religiously. We always tend to say, well, if I follow all the rules and do follow the instructions correctly, then I'm going to be rewarded. When you see people who are very excessively religious, like conservatively religious, I guess is the way to put it, people who belong to very strict evangelical sects that say everything has to be by the Bible, and really everything's not by the Bible because the Bible is a very chaotic text. It's not, if you are going to take your idea of God from the Bible, you're going to be a very mixed up person if you actually read it. Because it's not, because we always you're always taught, like in if you're a Catholic in CCD or in different things, that God is loving and merciful, and like Jesus, like he's like the good shepherd who's watching over you and this and that, and then you read the Old Testament and you're going, what the hell, you're reading about having armies of people who are slaughtering armies of castrated people or circumcised people, and and Yahweh turning his face away when they try to follow the rules and fly right. He's like, I don't care. I'm destroying you and the next 7 generations of you, because you did a wrong thing and you hurt my feelings. And and you kind of look at this guy and you're like, whoa, okay, he's he's a little there's a little bit of a problem there. But in any case, yeah. So people have these concepts, but people who tend to be very, very strictly dogmatically religious often they're people who are very afraid of life. They're very afraid of that variable that is not that uncertainty about things. The idea that all the efforts you make may or may not be rewarded in that grand scheme, because nature is not about. You try to make these deals with nature, but nature in a certain degree doesn't care. And that's kind of the problem. It's actually, sometimes I like H.P. Lovecraft's work, although a lot of people, again, don't like Lovecraft because he ended up being like a super racist and stuff like that. So a lot of people have been looking at Lovecraft rather differently. But if you look at his Cthulhu mythos that he writes in his horror stories, yeah, it's the idea that if you saw the reality of things, it's like all of these huge monstrous forces that could crush you, is the way that he would look at it. And that's the scary part. We would rather believe that there's a benevolent or benign agency that's looking after us. Now, I don't think it's all quite so bleak as that, because the powers of nature, it's like, are you working with them, or are you using your own mind and rationality and thinking that you control it? Because that's really the crux of a lot of these dark feminine stories. The belief that somehow we can conquer or fight with, or, and sometimes you can, like in some of the, what they call the Vasilisa stories, you can manage Baba Yaga through, just through cleverness or being able to do things in the right way. Or she has the benign, there's somebody who gives her gives her all the things that she needs, and she uses them appropriately, in the sense of giving. Because I remember in this story, I was talking about it. It's a little children's book I have, and I think I still have it downstairs. It was like 3 stories, and Baba Yaga was one of them. There was one about a Scottish tailor and a goblin in a graveyard. You had to. Basically, he was challenged to make this suit or this shirt for this wealthy man in the graveyard at midnight, where this goblin comes out of the ground, and chases him and all this stuff. And then, of course, there's the legend of Sleepy Hollow, and which, again, and I was telling Joanna, she's like, that's a weird combination of stories to put together. But Baba Yaga was shown as she has her house on chicken legs, which the house can kind of move, and she moves around in a mortar and pestle, which, if you don't know what that, I think most people know what that is, but basically it's like this bowl, and then there's the thing you use to grind the herbs in the mortar. The mortar is the kind of stone. I guess it's sort of like a cup. When you see Baba Yaga in the mortar, it's like a really deep one. It looks more like like a barrel almost. And then you have the pestle, which is used to grind whatever's in there. So she supposedly, this is how she gets by, and she actually has a broom instead of that kind of sweeps her tracks away as she goes. She travels with this. But the little girl's given, she's given a kerchief, and she's given a piece of bread or meat or something. She's given all these nice things, and as she goes along the way, she brought a can of oil. So her creaky gate, she pours oil on the creaky gate, and then she goes in, and there's a cat that's hungry, and she gives the cat this nice whatever the food was, and then she goes in, and the cook who's supposed to be cooking her for dinner, according to Baba Yaga, she gives the cook a pretty kerchief, and so then they kind of let her get away, and when she gets away, Baba Yaga says to all the people, she says, "Why did you let her get away?" "Well, you've never given me anything, but she gave me this." So in other words, the idea that because she gave, that's the thing that saved her. And so she had all of these kind of tools that became magical tools. That's the way fairy tales work. But anyway, we had a long conversation about it. So if you weren't on last night and didn't get to hear it, I did post the link this morning. I should have posted it last night, but I was tired. And already looks like 50 people have looked at it. But it ended up, conversations with Joanna are always really, really interesting. For some reason, she and I have a rapport, like a back and forth that we do very easily. So this one was, was very, very good. And, and she will be teaching the first class on Wednesday of next week, which will be on Baba Yaga. So this is a little bit of a preview on that. I was also talking to Joanne, who's not on this morning, but we were talking about the idea of getting, she has some other guests on her podcast who also want to start schools or run schools like mine. And then there's those of us who do coaching or have certain practices that we do that are a little more esoteric or spiritual in the way that we approach it. And she was talking about we were talking about the idea of maybe having a hub where we could all kind of be connected and refer each other, you know what I mean, to different things. So if people are looking to learn about certain things, they might want to go to this school or they might want to go to my school and kind of do this thing so that we can kind of be able to pool resources in terms of marketing, getting the word out there and so forth. And then being able to, depending on what because everybody has their own individual needs. You know, not everybody comes to me for coaching because I'm not necessarily what everybody feels comfortable with. Sometimes it's kind of like with therapists, even with like doctors and hairdressers and stuff, there's somebody who you click with, right? And you feel like that's the person you want to work with. And that's different for every person. Like I said, if somebody has a choice of coaches and they don't choose me, I don't feel offended by that because I feel like, no, you've got to work with the person who you feel is going to, who you intuitively feel like that's who you want or need to work with. So, this is why I don't ever push myself as the be all end all for everybody because it isn't necessarily, what everybody needs. So, and I think all the right people end up coming in. So, the other thing I was going to mention, was, last night was very strange because after I did the live stream, I had, Azrael has asked me to do a little kind of ritual experiment that I did, and he doesn't want me to talk about specifically what was involved, so I'm going to leave that piece out. But it made for a very strange night for me, where I know I slept for a period of time, and then I was awake, and it wasn't kind of the usual kind of being awake. It was like I was awake, but it was like every single one of my senses, it was like I could hear more things, and I could feel more things. It was just very weird. It was almost like I was not in my body, but somehow all my senses were heightened. It was very odd. And then I had a dream before I woke up. And this dream was very interesting because it was like I was like in a nursing home of some kind. That's what it felt like because they were older people like in, like hospital gowns, pajamas, like that kind of thing. And there was, and they were talking about this person, and I don't know who this person was, but I had a lot of, and I don't remember the name. I feel like the name started with a D, but I can't remember the exact name. And I don't know if this person was like an administrator. I don't know if this is a person, but whoever this was, I had a lot of words with this person, a lot of criticism of this person. And I remembered as I was going through this home hearing like, this person's now going to be, is now going to be in charge of everything. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, great. I've just told this person like all this stuff and now they're going to be in charge of everything, right? But it was like I had a bill to pay for something, and the bill was not something huge. It was something like $10. But then I was getting like this frantic notice, like almost with arrows drawn on it, like, you have these nine. Now, Azrael talks to me all the time about the 9, okay? And I'll talk about that in a minute. And they've made 22 charges, okay? Numerology is really interesting here. I was like, and so they handed me this bill, and it was a bill for, okay, note the number, 631. The number was 631. And I was like, and I'm looking at this list, I'm like, no, none of these people have anything, they are not mine. You have erroneously put them under the charges for, it seemed like there was one old man, who I kind of had a visual on, But I didn't feel like he was somebody I really knew, maybe somebody I visited once. It was more somebody connected to my mother. Like it was somebody she had taken on in some fashion or something that was connected to her. But just by the virtue of being her child, I was like, well, that doesn't connect it to me. And none of these other people are connected. So it was like I had this bill and I'm like, I don't owe for any of these people. The best you could say is maybe this one person who had made one or two little charges. I said, but I don't have, you have this is your fault. You have to figure this accounting out because I don't owe anything with respect to any of these 9. And that was interesting because Azrael has often talked about the 9 who have dissented in a way from whatever the new aeon is, whatever the new reality that we're moving into, that a lot of what he calls receivers, could be mediums, could be whatever, refer to as the divine feminine era that we're moving into, whatever that ends up meaning. And we've talked about various things about what that might mean. So it's almost like, but when I woke up, I'm like, it's like somehow, okay, 631. I had to look it up. Now, the problem with looking up anything like an angel number, and many of you maybe have figured this out, or have noticed this, if you've ever looked up numbers, is that if you look up any angel number, you're going to find somebody who says, oh, yeah, this is an angel number, and it means you're on the right path. And I'm like, that's just bogus. I mean, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're on the wrong path, but not every number just means the angels are saying, oh, you're on the right path. Then any number would mean that, right? It's just, each number has to have a different connotation or a different meaning. Now, 631 is said to, from what I could tell, is a number that has to do with grounding. And it also has to do with abundance and money coming in and things like that. And what was in my mind when I woke up is I said, okay, so whatever experiment I did the other day, it was almost like, that was like almost a karmic reckoning. Like I was somehow being karmically charged. Like my abundance hasn't picked up because somehow it's like I owe on these accounts, sometimes like with the guru, she'll say, oh, it's credits and debits, right? On your kind of karmic account, if you want to look at it that way. And I'm like, no, you're charging me with something that's not on my account. And the message I got I said, okay, well, if that was some kind of an accounting of my account, however that works, was it properly settled? And Azrael said, yeah, it was. In fact, I hear it feel in the back of my head right now. Yeah, he said it was properly settled. So I did another message this morning, and what did he say to me? He said, let's see. Oh yeah, Ils Hamel Kornf Kroadzi. This is the beginning of your true number, is what he said. So, which is actually 0, because I actually don't owe anything. I mean, I don't know if I have other karmas that I owe, but not with respect to this or to that group. So, I don't know. I'm hoping that means what's beginning is a time of abundance. It's funny how it's happening before the eclipse. But just a weird dream. The main thing I wanted to focus on with that dream, whatever it means for me personally, is the numerology of it. Because remember I had talked back, I did a thing on, from the Tarot Handbook, which I have here again, right here. And I talked about constellations, right? Number constellations. Now, if you add up 631, 6 plus 3 is 9, 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 can also be brought down to 1. So if we're talking about constellations, we're talking about the Magician constellation, which is the card number 1. And we have an image of it here, okay? And it's shaped like a diamond. And I'm just going to read to you, okay, so this includes a lot of cards. It includes anything that has a 1, or that basically that can be, the number can be pared down to 1. As you know, with numerology, when you do birth numbers and your year numbers and stuff like that, you take everything up and you add it down and you break it down to the lowest number as you add everything together. But because when we're dealing with tarot, the first one, both 1 and 10 have a significance, because there's cards that have that. So this one includes all the 10s, all the aces. It includes the Magician, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Sun. Okay, so and I have them. I pulled them. She uses the Crowley deck, so I pulled them from this deck. So we have So we have the Sun. Okay, Crowley Sun. We have the Wheel of Fortune. It's amazing, yeah. Wheel of Fortune. You have the Magician, okay? And anybody who has this deck, there's actually like 3 different Magician cards that you can get in the Crowley deck, but this is probably one of the most standard ones. And then you have the 10s. So you have the 10 of Wands, which is oppression. You have the 10 of Swords, which he calls ruin. These are all the cards of endings, right? You have the 10 of Cups, okay? And did I pull out the 10 of Pentacles? I don't know if I did. Let me see if I can grab it. Yeah, it's funny that that's the one I missed, right? Let me see if I can find the 10 of Pentacles in here. Ah, there it is, right there. Yeah, 10 of Pentacles, okay? And then you have all of the aces. So you have the Ace of Cups, you have the Ace of Discs, or Ace of Pentacles, you have the Ace of Wands, and lastly you have the Ace of Swords. Okay, so these are all part of this constellation, and they make the matrix is in a diamond shape. Okay, that's the way that this is. So I'll tell you what she says about it, what Angelis Arian says about it. She says, the Magician constellation holds 4 communication tools, plus 2 resources and 2 challenges to creativity. It's so funny that that's coming up at the time that we're talking about a school, well, not only about my resources, but also about creativity, right? The external manifestation of the Magician is communication creatively expressed. The Magician constellation reveals the principles associated with communication and creativity. In order to communicate clearly and effectively, we must use all of the Magician's tools, the 4 aces. Clarity of mind, which is the Ace of Swords, clarity of heart, which is the Ace of Cups, clarity of vision, which is the Ace of Wands, and clarity of action, which is the Ace of Discs. The Magician is witnessed or experienced externally through our creativity. I'm like, I hadn't even read this before I sat down. I'm like, this is weirdly relevant here. Symbolized by the Wheel of Fortune, which is the ability through communication and creativity to turn our lives in more fortunate and positive directions. Creativity is withheld or obstructed by fear of ruin, the 10 of Swords, by oppression, which is the 10 of Wands, or any tendency to withhold, edit, censor, or rehearse, which is also 10 of Wands. Creativity is enhanced by using our abundant communication and healing gifts and our wealth, which is the 10 of Discs, and by trusting what has heart and resonance for us, the 10 of Cups. We are fully expressing the power of the Magician and the Wheel of Fortune using our full vitality, which is the sun. Okay. And she says, the matrix is a diamond. The universal shape or archetypal matrix associated with Magician constellation is the diamond, representing a cross-cultural level, multifaceted clarity and precision. In Buddhist terms, diamond consciousness is clarity in action, creativity, and in work, communication. So, interesting, right? That we're talking about this. I mean, I would also note, as many people here know, and we're going to probably talk a little bit about some of this stuff over the weekend, where anybody who's in the intuitive development class. But aces have to do with beginnings, and 10s have to do with endings. So again, and Wheel of Fortune has to do with a cycle. And the sun would be that clarity, and of course, yes, the Magician being ruled by Mercury has to do a lot with communication. And about creating, about manifesting. The Fool may be about wanting to take a risk, but we kind of move from the idea stage to the manifestation stage, right? From 0 to 1. And then the High Priestess, of course, is all the things, because if the Magician is about action, the High Priestess would be more about what's felt or intuited or what's not seen, the unknown factors of the situation, or the things that are not quite manifest yet. So it's almost like these are energies that work together in some way. And so I thought that was an interesting dream to have in the face of the fact that we literally had a whole discussion about creativity last night and how to communicate clearly. Because one of the other things Joanna talked about was the way in which, because she was giving the example of, like, if you've taken 350 vacation photos and somebody sits down and says, oh, you've got to look at all of our photos. And, like, you first look at them with a little interest, and after a while you get kind of bored. You're like, okay, these obviously mean something to you. I don't, So she's kind of like, how do we take creativity that communicates effectively? How do you make it to say that people pay attention to what you're doing? I mean, it's still yours, and you can express it in the way that you want to express it. But she says honing your creativity can be about how do you do it in a way that people will notice it. So interesting, what we're seeing today. I have, it's just really, just kind of a weird set of things that are kind of going together here at the same time. And like I said, I feel like some of that is personal to me, but I feel like maybe this dream and the other things are coming in the wake of what's happening with the school and where it's going and what it's going to do, or what it, because that's really exactly what I want it to do, is to be able to be people, I can't even speak this morning, speaking of communication, people being able to communicate their creativity in whatever form that takes. Because as she pointed out, everybody's creative just by virtue of being alive. You're a creative being. So, so interesting where this is all going. And I thought I had one other thought about that just as I was, attempting to think things through this morning. See if I can remember what it was. I remember what it was, because I was thinking about the Azrael messages again as well, and I had gotten one yesterday that said something like, to the effect of, I am going to remove the poison. He had said to me, I'm going to remove the poison from you. So I kind of wonder if that dream had something to do with that as well. Like whatever the poison is, whatever is making me, it's like, okay, I'm still persisting, I'm still doing the work, but there's being stuck in certain ways. Because there's other things, obviously, I want to do. I want to, like I said, everybody who knows me knows I want to move abroad. Everybody knows that there's other things I want to do. I'd like to be in a position where I can just create and not worry about finances. Wouldn't we all like to be in that position, right? But it's so I don't know. I'm hoping this is a good sign that that's what's coming, and it may not necessarily be because of the school, because the school is, for all intents and purposes, a nonprofit. It's something that whatever funds I get for the school really need to go back into the school. A lot of them I've taken right now because I've had to pay for websites, and I've had to pay for legal fees, to make sure that I'm on the record so that I can pay people and stuff like that. So I have already spent money on stuff like that. So, and I don't, I kind of want to see where we go with this semester before I start getting into asking for more funding or bigger things, but right now we have a small group. And for those of you, I think Alex and Pat are in school. Joanne has also joined. We got more on the phone yesterday, so she will also be part of the class that's starting Wednesday. So, and I think, there's only one class she's going to miss because of her podcast. But, but we've got it. We sorted all that out on the phone yesterday. So that'll be good. And then we'll see if if I can get at least one more person. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. If I can get one more person. All right. Yeah, exactly. So we've got a good group of 3 so far. And if we can pull in a 4th person, that would be awesome. 4th, like I said, 5 is kind of what I was shooting for the first time, because I thought, it is a lot of money. It's a commitment for people. And I'd want to, it's not as much money as going to university, but it's definitely, it's a bit of a commitment. And so, the fact that I've even got 3 people right now, I'm like, I don't know what the expectations are of the other faculty, but because I think Kate was saying to me, she's like, well, maybe you could just put this off and do it next semester. I was like, no, I'm not going to put it off and do it next semester. I understand from her perspective, like, a lot of people are very busy and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but we're all always busy all the time, And, I really need to launch this now. I don't want, I actually feel like I've already delayed it. I feel like this was something I was supposed to do, like, a while ago. And now I feel like it's like, no, there's no more dawdling. Got to do it. And I understand from her perspective too. Maybe I know she's got a lot going on in her life that that she didn't anticipate, and nobody ever does. But I also feel like changing things around right now isn't necessarily going to make it easier for people. It just appears to be easier right now because we feel like we've bought ourselves more time. But I don't know. Anyway. It is kind of a hectic time scheduling wise for a lot of them, but again, and so that's why I think having a small group is good, because it's not like, we have 20 students and now, oh my God, everybody's so busy, so we'll see. There's still time to register. I think for the full term, strictly speaking, somebody could register for the full term up to the first week, especially if I'm going to record the lecture. So if somebody said, after October 2nd, they decided they wanted to join, I could have that recorded. It's just once we get to the seminar, that's where people are having conversations, and I think that's a piece that you know, I mean, you can watch the recording of it, but really it's something for people to participate in. So we'll see. But so that buys a little time for people who may watch the live stream and be thinking about it. So let's do our reading for today. Yeah, let's see what we've got. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, I do wonder how much of this has to do with the dream. But again, this is not a reading for me. Okay, so our first card is isolation. All right. So isolation. Now, this is the Three of Swords. Now, if you recall, if you see here, this is a person completely encased in ice. But you see this person is weeping. And the idea is that tears or sorrow are what begins the thawing process. You know, what allows you to heal, to break all this down. And so it's interesting. You know, we talk about things when people have, like people maybe who have done Rahani or done different things. Sometimes people will cry at different points and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cry. And it's like, no, it's actually okay, because that's a sign that the healing is taking place. It's a sign that you're moving out of isolation, that you're not freezing your heart, like you're opening your heart. Because heart opening is definitely an important component of what's going on right now. However we want to construe connecting to the feminine, it's going to involve opening the heart. You know, it's involved because it moves more in the realm of what is felt and what is intuited and what is imagined, rather than just what we rationally, logically, clinically dissected, you know, and which can isolate us. If you don't have a connecting point, if you don't feel like you have a tribe, if you feel like you're not connected to your family, if you feel like you're not, like somehow you believe something and everybody else around you believes something different. Like we all have these things that make us feel alone. If you've had bad relationships, whether it be with family, with lovers, whoever it is, you know, ex-spouses, there can be that feeling that you are alone, even if you're not technically alone. So there can be many ways in which we can feel isolated, and isolation is one of the two. I think I'd said the Three of Swords and the Five of Pentacles are the two big. They probably represent the core of most human anxiety. The idea that I'm alone and I'm not with a group, I'm not accepted by a group, or I've been cut off by either a betrayal or a loss. For some people, death can cut things off, and you know, there's all kinds of different ways in which we can be isolated, or just people who try to deliberately freeze us out for one reason or another, because we're not. You know, it could be people trying to control you. We were talking about when people try to control you by controlling the narrative, and so if they make people believe certain things about you, then you know, then you may feel like you've been cut off or isolated. And so this is about breaking out of isolation. This is about opening the heart. And in spite of the people who make us feel isolated, the way in which we need to reconnect, because internal feeling of which we're unaware is flowering. And this is interesting because this is, I consider this is the Queen of Pentacles in this deck. That's a very strongly creative card. Okay, this is about flowering into who you are, who you're meant to be. Like, in other words, not being isolated, not cutting it off, not having it kind of locked away. Oddly, the less I try to connect, the more I feel like I belong. Yeah, and it's interesting because I think the key word you have there, Sudha, is try. It's because a lot of times we feel like that's the action thing. There are steps I have to take to make this happen. I have to get into this mindset. And oftentimes it's just kind of letting things be what they are, and they kind of happen naturally, which is something a lot of times if you tell people that, if you say, I just let it come naturally, they're like, no, I have to be taking steps. I have to be proactive. I have to plan. Sometimes you don't have to do that with this kind, with things. You just by being, and just by being open, it's like the right things sort of, there's space for things to come in, because it's not, we're not frozen over. And all of us experience this to some degree. The external feeling of which we're aware, here we have our Tower card again, the Thunderbolt. And I like this version of it because you see this is the person sitting in the Lotus Asana, and but literally there's like this energetic storm that's going on here. This is the way that they interpret the Tower. So what is and it's interesting too, because I always think of that one. We think a lot of the physical pains we're all going through as we also make spiritual, as we're working on our spiritual paths in some way, or even just working on our regular path. Love that card. Pulled the Tower this morning in my reading. Yeah, this is definitely a time of pulling down old structures, and right now that's actually a really good thing, because the old structure leaves us like this, and in some way. It doesn't have to be the same way for everybody, but it leaves us in that way. And so this is, and the Thunderbolt card also, it's a process that goes on that brings us to an awareness of things. And it allows us to clear away and empty out that which isn't ours, that which we don't, that which we're becoming aware of that we're carrying, because now we have the burden card. True, I see the void, I become the void where creative lies. Yeah, exactly. And I think the manifestation part of that is when you look into the void, what are you manifesting out of the void? Because you have the power to manifest something out of the void. But what do we see? Because a lot of times I'm not a law of attraction person, but at the same time, I do think there's some truth to the idea that what we exude internally is what will manifest for us externally. So, the magician energy, exactly. And, so we have the burden. So this is about dropping the burdens of others. Now, of course, this makes me think of the dream that I just had, right? But I think beyond that, I think this is about figuring out, we've talked about that a lot, figuring out what's our stuff and figuring out what's not our stuff, what's blocking us, what's making us feel stuck, what's making us feel isolated, or feeling like, in despair in some way. And the outcome is not the magician, rather, but the fool. So the fool is about taking risks. It's about dropping all these people and these other things and, taking the challenge to do something that you haven't done before, or something that you think, obviously when we say risks, we only say risks within reason. We're not telling anybody to literally go walk off the side of a cliff. But there may be certain things that just may socially seem risky that we do, or where we just make certain decisions about what's right for us, and other people may say, oh no, well, if you do that, there's no guarantee you're going to have this, there's no guarantee you're going to build up a big retirement, there's no guarantee you're going to do this and that. And really, is that what the point, is that what the point is? If you're taking risks and some of these very Capricornian kinds of considerations are the things that are mainly stopping you. It may be saying, look, we may be doing things a whole different way in the next 5 years. You don't always want to make decisions based on the way it's always been done. Now, again, everybody has to do what's right for them. I'm not telling people throw your 401k away. Who cares? We're not telling people to do that. But at the same time, we all have to make decisions about what we need, or where we need to be, or what is it that we need to be doing. When is a risk appropriate? And I feel like for a lot of people, especially with this tower energy, we're like, okay, the way that we did this before just is not going to work. And to the point of the burden card, a lot of times we accept things as, but I have to do this, that are not actually ours. You may be taking on things like in the dream I had, the one person who I looked at that list of people who I did not know, the only person whose name who I thought, okay, maybe that's a name, that had nothing to do, that was literally something, a person my mother had said she was going to take on their burden or their expense or whatever. And instead of going to my mother, they were looking at me. And I'm like, I didn't agree to take this on. So it's a question of, so that can actually, in a way, when we talk about the eclipses and family trauma, which might be true for some people and not necessarily for everybody, but since there seems to be this kind of ancestral focus, it might not even directly have to do with your immediate family. It could have to do with other people, ancestors. It could have to do with just even, not even so much being at loggerheads with people. It may just be more even just that, like, what family expectations or traditions or patterns that you say, that's not me, and I don't want to do that. Which could, even if you have people in the family who go, oh yeah, well, I understand. Sometimes you still have that undercurrent of disapproval. So, this is about figuring out getting to a point where you say, I'm sorry, if it's not mine, I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it on. I don't owe people. I don't always have to be. I'm not telling people to be mean, but sometimes we do things because we feel like it's impolite or we have to be nice or whatever. And it's like, no, you don't. I mean, you don't have to be mean. Like I said, when people try to tell me, oh, well, you really, traditions. Yes, I'm feeling so much over this lately. Yeah. Where it's almost like, oh, but, you know, this is what your sister did or this is what this one did. And I'm like, guess what? I'm not my sister. So I don't have to do that. I'm a different human being. I know it's hard to believe or to accept. I'm a different human being. So, and sometimes that's the way you feel. You feel like you're part of a cluster and some people have sort of categorized you in a certain way. So therefore, this is what you must do. Whether it has to do with our gender, whether it has to do with race, whether it has to do with social status in some other way, whether it has to do with economic status, whatever people have pigeonholed us as based on who or what we are, you know, how we look, whatever. None of that has any bearing on who we really are. And I mean, it doesn't have to, let's put it that way. I mean, yes, there can be people who are proud of their traditions and identify with family stuff. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but we also tend to take on a lot of stuff that we should not take on. You know, the things, every family has something like that. You know, every family has, I don't want to say skeletons in the closet exactly. I think it's more like everybody has some kind of a thing that maybe is accepted as normal, that maybe other people might not quite see it that way. Or you have a certain family member who maybe is more controlling of other family members, or we all have some, it doesn't have to be exactly that, but we all can have some variety of that to greater or lesser degrees. And I don't feel like we're in a time of doing it the same old way almost at all anymore. I mean, you know, yeah, there might be certain things that we preserve, but this is more, if we want to think about that in Hindu terms, you know, we think of Brahma as the creator and we think of Vishnu as the preserver and Shiva as the destroyer. This is definitely more a lot of Shiva energy here. This is more about destroying. But although even Vishnu to a certain degree has his avatars, or even the family narrative that shapes us. Yeah, well, yes. And the family narratives, those are very hard because some of them we're not even conscious of. You know, we are playing something out that we have, until we know what the family story is, we don't realize that this is something that we're repeating. If it's not something that immediately, like, you know, I can point to my mother and say, okay, there's certain things that I know are challenges that I have, by the way, because of the way I was raised and because of the challenges she had when she was raised, or not really raised at all, but there's the challenges that she had, but then there's even the challenges of her parents and her grandparents, and it kind of goes on. And there's some of those challenges I'm only finding out about now. Like when I talk to her, when I do ancestry stuff, she'll be like, oh, well, yeah, there was Uncle so-and-so, and he wasn't really a very good man, and, you know, he did this and he did that. And I'm like, how come I never knew about this, but was never talked about before, you know? And then you start to realize what the patterns are so that you don't have to do the same thing, you know. Anyway, we're at 10 of, so thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful today, and that you guys enjoyed it, and it's useful. If you haven't seen the live stream, check it out. I think it's good whether you're planning to do anything with the school or not. It's really, it's an interesting watch. And we did have people jump in going, this was fascinating. We had at least one person was like, this was fascinating. I was like, yeah, it is. It's fascinating stuff. So, you're welcome. You're welcome. And, yes, thank you. You're welcome. And, some of you I will see, well, I'll be back again. Today's Saturday, tomorrow morning, and some of you also see tomorrow afternoon. So, take care and have a great Saturday. Talk to you soon.